Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Merwin, and I lead LinkedIn's SMB relationship management team for North America. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. We have a great session planned, and we are going to be talking about how to maximize your return on investment with LinkedIn solutions. And we have some wonderful panelists with us today. So we're going to spend about 45 minutes doing some Q&A, and then we're going to leave some time at the end for questions. So be thinking about the things that you'd love to ask our panelists. So Jay, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with a little bit about who you are and where you work.
Sure. My name is Jay Zadie. I'm Senior Manager of Recruitment at TMX Group. One thing that you don't know about my profile, that's not on my profile LinkedIn, is I've got two beautiful children. I used to be in the Canadian Army, and I've jumped out of a plane 4 times. So I'll tell you a little bit about TMX Group. We are a tech-enabled global exchange group. So what that means is we own the Toronto Stock Exchange. We own other various exchanges across Canada. We also have offices in London and New York, Sydney, Australia, China. And each of those offices have various firms that are in the financial services industry, 14 of them, in fact. And when we look at the Toronto Stock Exchange, a very old stoic organization, we also have 4 tech companies that we're also incubating as well. So we've got a mix of the old and we've got a mix of the new.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Arnaud, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Arnaud Carmouche, Manager Talent Acquisition at Uni-Select since 4 years now, where I'm in charge of all key program and initiative related to talent attraction initiatives, employer branding strategies, onboarding process. I have something. I have a tattoo. It's not unique, I know that, in a very special area. But here, don't figure out anything.
Thanks, Arnaud.
Seriously. Uni-Select is a publicly traded organization of $1.9 billion in revenue. We are probably the most well-known hidden organization in North America. You probably heard about Autopart Plus. We are in the automotive aftermarket industry. We do have a presence in all major Canadian cities, in 48 states, and basically we became the Canadian leader and the 50th largest distributor in the US of automotive replacement part, paint, equipment, tool, and accessories.
Great. Thanks, Arnaud. And Angie?
Tough act to follow. I'm Angie McDonald. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for the Realogy Franchise Group, which is a business unit within Realogy Holdings Corporation. Realogy Franchise Group is one of the leading franchisors in the real estate industry. And you probably know our brand names, Better Homes and Gardens, Century 21, Coldwell Banker Commercial, Sotheby's International Realty, ERA, and most recently acquired Zip Realty. And I actually oversee the talent acquisition team as well as the HR business partners and our HR operations function. Many of you were at opening sessions, so you know my hidden talent is that I'm a Zumba instructor. But besides that, I am also a published author. I actually collaborated with 16 other writers about 3.5 years ago to publish a motivational and inspirational book. So that's another hidden talent that I do have. One thing I do want to say about Realogy is it is one of, we have 4 business units, and it really is a real estate services provider in many facets, and we operate in over 104 countries around the globe. So it's a huge organization, and as I mentioned, you know our brand names, probably more than you know the Realogy name, but at least you know how to say it now, because a lot of people have a hard time saying that name.
Great, thanks, Angie. So let's go ahead and dive in, and I'd love for each of you to share a little bit about your recruiting team. So tell us about the size of your team and also why you originally became a LinkedIn customer. So specifically, what were you trying to solve for?
Yeah, so I'm going to start by saying that I've been a LinkedIn recruiting customer at various employers or in various clients, if you want to call it that, since 2010. So when I stepped into TMX Group in 2012, we piloted LinkedIn Recruiter's seat and 3 job slots. The reason why I wanted to do that was to prove a point that we don't have to rely on on our agency partners, which was very much one of those things that our organization just went for when we were really looking for talent. So once we piloted that, we decided we're going to expand that program as we expanded our business. So we went from about 850 people when I started to about 1,600 resources today. And in that time, we've also expanded our global presence as well. So we went from the 1 seat and 3 job slots to 6 seats. So all of our recruiters have seats. And we have 21 job slots now. We just bought into the career page and the Work With Us ads as well.
Great. Thanks, Jay. Arnaud?
As you can imagine, attracting people across North America for a not sexy organization, not glamour industry is not an easy task. With my collaborators, we are a team of 5 right now. Our goal is to hire 1,300 people per year. Long story short, back to 3 years ago, when we have decided to use LinkedIn as one of our main tools. We place LinkedIn as the cornerstone of our employer branding strategy, and especially the employer branding strategy. We didn't try to solve everything at the same time. At that time, we signed the first contract with one premium account, one. Then progressively, we moved to 5 recruiter seats, 11 job slot, 2 silver career page. We'll be able to explain why 2 silver career page later in order to achieve this goal.
Great, thanks. And Angie?
So I became a LinkedIn product user about 2 years ago. We have 3 recruiters, well, 2 recruiters and a specialist on our team. And they recruit for our business unit, which comprises about 1,000 employees. We hire about 200 or so people a year across the US as well as in Hong Kong and the UK. We had a very unique situation whereby we were losing credibility with our clients. We were being viewed as a very traditional shop. We post on traditional job boards and have a just-in-time approach to recruiting, which was really damaging our credibility. We weren't being viewed as partners, and a lot of our hiring managers were going out and finding people on their own. And so I was tasked with coming up with an innovative solution to step into the new millennium, basically, and try to figure out how to go about this. So I engaged my recruiter, who's actually here in the audience, Christine Hyde, and I said, okay, we need to come up with an idea, something to really make sure that we keep credibility and keep our clients engaged with utilizing us, or we may be an outsourced function. And she came back to me and she said, I really think that we need to invest in social sourcing, and provided me with a number of different avenues. And we looked at, we did some research on some key social networking sites like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. But what we did was we really looked at what our needs were. And we identified 3 needs. One was we needed to attract quality hires and quality talent. We also needed to create a talent pipeline so that we were not viewed as just-in-time recruiters. And we also needed to create brand awareness. People didn't know Realogy. So when we posted a position out there and the Realogy logo was there, it wasn't attracting people. And we found that LinkedIn really could meet all 3 of those needs. So that's how we became a LinkedIn user.
Great. Thanks, Angie. And I'm sure everyone in the audience has a slightly different solution, so it would be helpful if you could just each take a turn and share, why did you decide to invest in a particular solution that you have, given the business challenges you were trying to solve?
So when we first started, we had no money. And, I said, Christine, honestly, I can't afford LinkedIn. It's a lot of stuff. Can't we just figure out how to find people on there? And she said, no, you have to buy into it. So we met with our rep and said, okay, I got 0 budget. What can I do with that? And she said, all right. And so we started very small. It was 1 recruiter seat, and I gave that to Christine. And I think we had like 5 job slots and maybe a career page, which we really didn't know what to do with it. But we worked really closely with LinkedIn, and the reason why I think that we started out that way was because we had to prove a point. We had to prove that this was something that we really could invest in and yield results. And what it did was it met the need of pipelining. That was probably the very first thing it did for us. We were able to be proactive and go out there and in-mail people or research where people were, look for specific skills. This was a platform that had a plethora of different candidates all across the US, globally. So that's why we started there, and it really did start to yield some results. We had some great wins at all levels, and most notably a senior level. And then as the years went on, which I think we're on 3 years now, we grew that up. We grew that and grew it because we started to show that and demonstrate that this was something that we were gaining, we were getting great results from. And so we went from that very first, one career page, one seat, to a gold package, a gold career page. We have 3 seats, recruiter seats, and 25 slots. We also have these dynamic pages, 5 dynamic pages. They're recruitment ads. And basically what we can do is we can say, okay, if we have 5 core functional areas that we need to target: franchise sales, marketing, real estate business consulting, finance and accounting, and maybe administrative, we can customize those pages so that it attracts that type of profession out there. So, we started small, but then you started to increase as you saw how you were able to yield results, and I think that that's really the best way to go about it.
Great, thanks, Angie. And Arnaud, tell us about your unique solution and why it's made sense for you.
Like I said earlier, we moved from one premium account to, let's say, a turnkey solution. During this transition, we also bought what we call a gold carrier page. At that time, our goal was to increase or implement our branding strategy. We do have different brands. I didn't mention that the head office of the organization is in Montreal. That's the reason of my accent. Several brands, several locations. So by having a gold carrier page, we were able to tweak the audience by using it as a, let's say, a sub-carrier page. Then, long story short, we did demonstrate the added value of doing this. When I had to renew my contract, I was able to explain to the organization that instead of tweaking a solution, we can maybe use another way. So that's the reason why, since this year, one of our important business units has decided to invest in a silver carrier page. So I cannot say that the job has been done, but it's a progression.
Great, thanks. And Jay?
I'd like to start out with where we were and where we came from, the reason why we plugged into the LinkedIn solution. So when I started with the TMX group, we were really heavy with the job boards. We were also very heavy with agencies. We were also very cognizant of the fact that there was a lot of rogue hiring going on. So a lot of hiring managers would just go out to an agency and just hire somebody and then tell our group afterwards. Actually, we didn't even have a recruiting group at that time. And what we needed was a solution that could compete against some of our external, I'm going to call them partners, but at the same time they're almost adversarial in nature because these are commission-based recruiters. So when we piloted the LinkedIn solution, very simply what we did is we started taking on some of those searches, and we say, okay, Mr. Hiring or Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager, give us 2 weeks, let's see what we can do for you and come up with the quality of the candidates that you're looking for. So when we started piloting that, what was really interesting was that we started seeing a shift, one hiring manager at a time, because we were starting to engage them in the search. Actually, in fact, what we'd do is we'd actually sit there with the hiring manager sometimes, and we'd actually go through the whole search process with them, actually doing the live searches right on LinkedIn. So we started engaging them. They started seeing the value in our recruiting capabilities, and they started realizing, guess what? We're coming up with the same candidates these agency folks are. So once we piloted that, once we started seeing some successes, we then said, okay, well, if we have this kind of success, and if we're saving $20,000, $30,000 a head, or maybe even $40,000 in some roles, why not bring that capability internally, centralize that function, get our hiring managers on the same page, and it was a real education process. And let's start expanding, the arsenal that we have, not just the LinkedIn product itself, but the reduction in job boards, and as well as focusing on a core skill set as a recruiting team. Yes, we also use other products out there as well. We don't necessarily pay for all of them, but it's, again, it just sort of gives us a more total and complete package. Google X-ray searches, if we're talking about Indeed, we certainly are plugged in with them. We also have Twitter, we also have Facebook to a lesser degree as well. So that led us to expanding our team and expanding everybody with a seat, because we knew that if each recruiter had their own seat, that they could do the same thing that I was doing and that my other teammates were doing as well.
Great, thanks. So it can't all be roses. So I'd love for you to each share what some of the biggest challenges you faced as you implemented the solutions at your organizations. You want to start us off?
Well, again, if we look at LinkedIn and the way I look at LinkedIn, it's a really good chisel. You can call it a surgical scalpel, whatever you want to call it. The problem is, just because somebody gives you a hammer doesn't mean you're a carpenter, right? So you can have the best hammer in the world, you can have the best recruiting tool in the world, but if you're not skilled at using it, or using the capabilities that are inherent in it, or even thinking outside of the box and tying it with something else, another recruiting product of some sort, or maybe even just complementing, say, a Google search. And I use Google a lot because it's certainly the all-encompassing search engine. But if we tie that together, we come up with this framework that we can build on when it comes to hiring talent. But the challenge that we had was upskilling the recruiting team so that everybody's operating at the same level. Because the team is operating at different levels. We have junior, we have intermediate, we have senior players on our team. If we can get everybody to a consistent level and an operational level where they're almost autonomous with the business units and embedded with the business units, then they are more apt to be able to deliver consistent quality, whether or not they're hiring for IT, hiring for HR, hiring for finance, hiring globally. At least we have this standard that we set. And I call it the recruiting standards, but that's exactly what it is.
And so as you were thinking about upgrading the talent across your team, what had to change about the day-to-day process or way that you were measuring success of the recruiting team?
So I'm not sure if anybody here is going to admit that they used to do post and pray or still do post and pray, but we certainly did as an organization. So one hand went up.
All hands are up.
The problem was a process. Again, because we had rogue hiring managers, there was no process, right? Not every manager was going off on their own. Some of them tried to stick to the process, but the problem was that we didn't have a process that was being enforced. So what we had to do is, first of all, tighten up the process, tighten up the relationship, but as well on the front end, add an analytics and research component, and that's where LinkedIn came in. Because not only are we just going out there and posting a job and hoping that the right person applies and we engage them and we hire them, but now we are adding this function where even before we meet the hiring manager, once we hear about a requirement, we can actually do a search. We can save those searches. We can put the right prospects in various buckets through the LinkedIn engine, and we can actually sit down with our hiring manager during the intake session. We call it the job scoping framework. We sit down in the job scoping framework and we present them a list of qualified people by geography, by demographics, by the size of organization, and by skill set. And that kicks off a conversation where the hiring manager will let us know, and maybe even some of the executives will let us know in terms of where we're going in terms of the right direction or the wrong direction, and fine-tuning that so that when we do kick off that search officially with our hiring managers, we've already got a pipeline of candidates that we can actually start pinging. So
great, thanks. And Arnaud, what was most challenging for your organization?
I remember when we launched the first turnkey solution back to 2 years ago now. LinkedIn, like the other tools we launched, has been what I call a real shaker for the organization. Not only for the HR function or for the talent acquisition specialist, but it has been a shaker because we were obliged to redefine the way we see the recruitment activities across the organization. And in fact, today, this is probably the only thing I can preach across the organization. We have to be consistent. No matter what type of tool you are using, you have to move away from the old post and pray spirit. But when I say shaker, I mean that who does what, when. We had to review the way we manage our candidate, the way we manage our requisition, which is also important. So we went through a very tough period, but now I can see that it's going not too bad.
Great, and Angie?
So for us in the franchise group and with the recruiting team specifically, you know, we started out having this huge splash because we had some, you know, some concerted efforts to show and demonstrate success. But that second year, or it was our real first full year, we had 3 waves of challenges. The first was with our recruiters. So I had this one recruiter who was gung-ho. She loved it. This is what she brought to me. Then I had another recruiter who literally had to shift her entire way of recruiting. You know, she just had a very different model and approach. And when you become a creature of habit and you become an expert in your field and you start to be consistent, when someone introduces something new to you, it becomes almost like, you know, change is not good for me. And so she really did have to rework her process. She couldn't just post a position. She couldn't just go and have an intake session and hear what it was that the manager wanted. She had to be proactive. So it was a change in mindset on how you recruit. How you recruit today is not how you recruit tomorrow, especially not in the social sourcing space. The second wave, which probably was the most difficult, was with leadership. And it's social media's fault, right? Because social media equals instant gratification, right? Hire, where are they? How come you haven't gotten them? What, you're only 7% with LinkedIn? You told me to put all this money into it and you haven't had, you know, 50% of the hires through it. So we really had to educate them and express to them that it's not instant gratification. It's just because I have the solution doesn't mean that it's going to yield results tomorrow. It's about long-term results, and it's about work. There's a lot of work that goes into it before you really start to see it. And I think that that's really key and critical for you to express to your leadership, that the investment is a long-term solution. It's retention. You know, it's about really engaging a relationship with people. It's about referrals. It's about connecting people to your community. So I think that Christine and I really were challenged with expressing the fact that, you know, it's not instant gratification to the leaders. And then the third wave was the hiring manager. So again, you know, they weren't as participatory in that. I mean, usually if they have a referral or they know someone in the network, that's their way of participating in the hiring process. But we had to show them a very different type of way to collaborate and really partner with your recruiters. And that was, hey, are you on LinkedIn? Yes, I am. Oh, okay. Well, let me explain to you how you and I can work on the platform to recruit people. Your sphere of influence is very different than my recruiter's sphere of influence, and we can attract a much more diverse candidate pool. And the other thing was, you know, they were very accustomed to seeing traditional type of resumes. And you know that that's not what you originally get. If someone's on the road and sees a job on LinkedIn, what do? It says upload your profile, right? So they get their profile. So my recruiter's sending them the profile. I get a call. What is this that they sent us? It's a name, it's the company, it's a title, and that's it. Well, that's the new way of people really introducing themselves, and this is just an introduction, just so that you could get a glimpse of what they are, who they are, what they're about. And so it was really training them on understanding that it's a different approach and it's a different model, and it will yield long-term results.
Great, thanks, Angie. And one follow-up question, as you think about the processes that you had to change, you talked about changing the behavior of recruiters. Mm-hmm. What else did you have to change in terms of how you were measuring success?
So, you know, again, because you don't have instant gratification, I can't say that, you know, Christine hired, you know, 12, 15, 20 of the 100 people through LinkedIn. So what I had to do was really work with our reps. And I have to say, Miranda Calvert is one of the best reps you have in LinkedIn. I have to give her a shout out. So she's amazing. And, you know, she really did help us a lot. And what I would say is that, you know, you have to start looking at the activity. You can go on there, how many in-mails are they sending? You know, how many relationships are they building? You know, who are they really mapping out across the US that have the skills? How are they approaching the intake sessions? Are they going there with data? Because they can, right? So if you have the job description and you know what the minimum qualifications are, you know the geography that we're really, focused on, and you know the competitors, you can really get a lot of data and then go to your intake sessions with your clients with a lot more than just, hey, so what are you looking for? What's your ideal candidate? You can go in there and say, hey, here's your talent pool, here's your population. You may want to look at your qualifications and retweak how you go about it. So it really was about getting them to think in a more proactive manner and have a different approach on how they process it. And then for me to measure them, not necessarily have a scorecard, because I just don't measure that way. I think it's hard when you first get on a platform to really try to measure them that way, but to say your activity's low. And this is what you can be doing. Almost how in general session when someone said, I wish, I wonder if you did something, you sort of have that type of approach. I like what you're doing. I wish you could do more of this. And I wonder how we would, how our results would be if you had this approach to it. So it's about that type of measurement.
Great, thanks for sharing. Arnaud, would you share with us a story of how you maximized ROI at your company?
As LinkedIn was pretty new for the organization, and not only LinkedIn, but the talent acquisition function, I could share several stories, but in fact, I always try to answer to the same question. When we just hire someone and receive a call from upper management saying, hey, Arnaud, how did you find this person? Where did you find this great new employee? That's the beauty of using a tool like LinkedIn, because we can get data from the platform. But it's true that by using LinkedIn more efficiently or on a regular basis, you have to deal with more applicants. Mm-hmm. You have to deal with more passive candidates and maybe unsolicited candidates. So that's the reason why, in addition to just what you said, it could be difficult, or it could be a challenge for a recruiter who is not familiar with the technology, who doesn't know what it means sending email versus mass email. So that's the reason why it's been a very tricky situation for us.
Sorry.
You agree?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good.
Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
I was just pretending I was Arnaud. No. Yeah.
We all are.
Arnaud's got such a great story, actually. But I'll tell you, every time we recruit somebody, we run through a very similar story, but I'm going to talk about a VP that we wanted to hire. So one of our executives came to me and said, I want to hire a vice president. It's a brand new role. Let's scope it out and everything else. So what executive search firm should we use? That was the question, right? And I kind of took a risk and I said, no, you don't need no executive search firm. I can do it myself, or my team can do it. And so I was kind of talking to her, and her arms kind of crossed like this, going, okay, Jay, you got 2 weeks. Right? Or you got a time frame. Right? I can't remember exactly what the time frame was. So what I did is, once we scoped the role, I actually went on LinkedIn, and of course I did some data retrieval, right? Some data analysis. I looked at the talent pool based on the skill set that we're looking for, based on what needed to be accomplished over the next few years. This is a long-term role. I found several hundred candidates that sort of fit the bill right across Canada. So it was a cross-Canada search. We also looked in the US. We found in total that there's about 6,000 people in North America that had the keywords and the skills. So we dug a little bit deeper, and we divided the data up by location, by tenure, by the size of the organization, by the various skill sets that these candidates had to offer. So over the course of refining this data and working with this particular executive, we actually narrowed down to 30 candidates that we thought might be a good fit. So from that point onwards, what I did was send an email to each and every one of them. But the email was tailored and crafted so that it spoke to each individual, rather than sending 30 mass in-mails or emails. And I have to say the response rate actually was 100%. It is a fairly visible role, because we're a fairly visible organization in the Canadian capital markets place. And out of the 30, I had spoken to all of them, and then we narrowed it down to about 15 that I met face-to-face, because these are executives and VPs. We're not asking them to come into the office and check in and hang out with us while they wait in a room while I get the hiring manager. It wasn't like that at all. I actually went out to them, sat down, met with them for coffee, get a little bit of a better sense of how, who they were and how they'd fit the position. Eventually, we narrowed that down to 4 individuals that we brought into the office to meet with our executive teams and run through the whole gamut of the interview process, and we tried to tighten that up as much as possible. We got down to the final 2, and we selected 1. So what that did in the eye of the executive is all of a sudden it shifted their mentality a little bit. Rather than thinking that they have to go out to their friendly executive search firm that'll do for $125,000 to $200,000 or whatever the going fee is now, something like that. They're now looking at us and saying, okay, well, you guys did this once. Why don't you try doing it again and again and again? So this year we've hired probably about 225 people. We didn't go through the same process with every one of them. This is 225 year to date. We're expecting 330. But anyways, we've hired 3 VPs. We're about to hire another one, all through LinkedIn. And if you just tabulate the amount savings, I call it the simple ROI because that's the easiest way to calculate it. We're talking about $600,000 to $800,000 of value that we've extracted from LinkedIn, which is basically 10 times our investment almost at that point. And that's definitely paid for itself, not just in dollars, but also mind share as well, because our executives are not asking us. They're coming to us and they're not just talking about finding people now, they're talking about workforce planning and how do we rejig this organization, how do we move people internally from one position to another. How do we get our employee referral program involved as well? Because guess what? Our employee referral programs, they find people on LinkedIn and refer them to us as well. We're fairly aggressive from that perspective. So again, we look at it more of a holistic way. But if I just talk about LinkedIn in itself, it's definitely paid for itself 10 times over year after year after year. It's not easy. You have to be skilled, and it does take time. It's not the perfect solution for every search. But from a highly skilled search or a technical search or even an executive search, it's really shining. It's really shining for us right now.
Great, thanks. And Angie, tell us a story about your organization.
So I guess the story that I wanted to focus on is really going back to what we were trying to solve and why did we really connect and partner with LinkedIn. And that was about our credibility. One of the things that is probably classified as a hard position to fill within our organization is the franchise sales role. It's a sales professional that's basically responsible for a certain territory, and they go out there and try to gain, sell franchises to either independent owners or already franchised brokers out there. And so it's a very small niche world. And a lot of people have done it, and not a lot of people that are out there trying to do this because it's a sales commission based role. And so we had a very unhappy client. He was not satisfied with the volume. He was not satisfied with the types of candidates we were bringing in, their caliber, their skill set. And so it was great to know that. And so I went to my recruiter and I said, okay, here's the deal. We have to meet with him and we need to prove to him that, we can find the people that he wants. However, he needs to broaden his skill set. He needs to really be open to, more than just the 4 things that, he believes would fit this bill. And so what she did was sort of like a mapping analysis. It was sort of looking at the geographic location, the 50 states, and taking those 4 critical skills that he would not budge on and our competitors and saying, okay, these are your talent pool. These are the people who do what you're looking for. There's about like 60 of them across the US. And so going into that meeting and having that data that we were able to pull from LinkedIn really resulted in us having credibility and saying, this is who your talent pool is. And by the way, of those 60 people, we've interviewed like 25 of them. Then we said we didn't like them or we didn't want them. And the rest are, the bottom quartile. You don't want them in this organization. And so he kept saying, where did you get this information from? And he kept saying, where did you find this? And we said, we were on LinkedIn and we did this zoning, this mapping. And he was very, very impressed with the fact that we were able to really show him his landscape there. This is your talent pool. And it's really about being able to have, the data to back it up. And that really was through this vehicle. And it really gained credibility for our recruiter and be able to say, okay, this is why you need to be a little bit more open-minded, and this is why you need to broaden your scope, because you can attract a different level candidate. So that was really a unique story for us.
Great. Thanks. So everyone's in the session to understand how to maximize their ROI of their solutions. So the last question that I'd love for each of you to answer before we go to Q&A is, what piece of advice would you have for everyone sitting in the audience if you haven't already shared it?
I'm a huge data nut. I love data. So if I have the ability to help influence a decision by using data, I do it. When we're building the recruiting team, we're not building just one singular function, just recruit. We're actually trying to build a practice, right? So we look at it from a holistic perspective. We don't just look at one particular tool as the mother of all recruiting tools. We look at all the various options that are out there and utilize them accordingly. So when I am presenting data and when I am speaking with hiring managers, when I am speaking with our executive team, I'm not just quoting one single source. I do research. I look at LinkedIn. I look at articles. I look at the who's who in various particular industries. And I encourage all of you to use data to try and create a story, right? At the end of the day, that's what you want to do. You want to be able to grab all these numbers, and they're just nebulous numbers that float around everywhere, and create an opportunity for you to be able to tell a story to the people that matter, right? And the people that matter are yourselves, your teammates, as well as your hiring managers. I think data is a good lead-in, but that's not the only thing. You also have to be able to figure out what you're going to do with that data as well, right? If you just present facts and figures all the time, do nothing about it, well, then they're generally useless, right? So you have to develop a plan of action once you have that data.
Hopefully the new visualization tools that we heard about this morning will be helpful.
Oh, they look cool, actually.
Great.
Yep.
Arnaud and Angie, anything from you in terms of advice?
Just 2 words, good luck. No, seriously. In fact, and that's what I learned, not only since I worked for Uni-Select, but during the course of my career. Be patient, be patient. You cannot solve all your problems with one specific and unique tool. As soon as you communicate your result, as soon as you educate your business partner, your hiring manager, your employees, or I will prefer to say our team members, top to bottom, because at the top, they give you the check at the end of the year, you have to spread the word around you. Then after that, naturally, your cost will turn into investment, pretty sure.
Great.
So I agree with my colleagues, but what I would say to you is do your research on your own needs. You really need to look internally and figure out what it is that you need to solve for. It's sort of like Alyssa's first question to us. You can't just go out there and because we're saying this product works or this, tool works, it's going to work for you. I don't know that, but I would sit down and really do some analysis and do some homework on what are your needs? How much do you have to hire? What types of positions are you hiring for? What's your budget? And then from there, try to carve out a plan and create a strategy. One of the things we did last year to prepare for 2014 was we looked at all of the things that we piloted. And we looked at all of the boards we used and the niche sites and the LinkedIns and the Facebooks. And we said, okay, this is our pot of money. And this is what we need to do. So how are we going to build a plan to recruit for that? And we came down to 4 specific things. We said we were going to use Indeed because it really was, of all the job boards out there, what was helpful for us on a volume standpoint. And really did hit that low to mid-level type of candidate that we needed on a local level. We're in Madison, New Jersey. And so it really did help us there and on all other states as well. We also went to a video platform because we recruit a lot across the US, and because we're in New Jersey, we can't fly everybody in. That costs money. So we utilize this video interviewing platform to really do the initial screenings, okay? And then we went to Glassdoor, and we did Glassdoor because we needed to make sure that we managed our reputation on social media. Okay, a lot of people go there and Yelp, right, to give reviews. If you don't own that real estate, you're not able to tell people the story that you want to tell them. They hear the story that other people are telling. And it's also good to communicate with those people. Negative feedback is great, because you know what, you can do something with it, right? So if I know that maybe the process that my candidate went through wasn't a good experience, I want to talk to that person to figure out what can I do to make that process better. Hire you next time? Well, maybe not. That's not the good process. But maybe it's the timeliness of how we get back to you. Maybe it's the questions that the manager asked you. So, really being able to get that and own that real estate to say, these are the perks of my company, this is what we do, this is what we offer, this is who we are, it's priceless. And LinkedIn. And because I think that that's really a multifaceted platform for you to be able to really be proactive, to really campaign, provide brand awareness, to pipeline and network, to gain a lot of individuals for positions, not just for today, but for tomorrow. And then to also gather the data, so that you're not posting and praying, and you're not just doing a just-in-time recruitment process. You're doing a very strategic thing. You're partnering with clients to hire the talent within your organization. So it really does start with understanding the needs of your organization and how much money you need to spend on that in order to meet the result.
Great, thanks so much. And so we'd love to move into some Q&A. We've got mics on both sides of the aisle here, so come on up.
I don't know if people are getting up and leaving or coming to work.
We got some coming up.
Hi there. I think you said that you had a gold page, but then you moved to two silver pages.
Right.
Could you explain that and what drove you to that decision and how that has been more successful for you?
Good question. I was prepared for this one. Because it has been a tough decision, not only for me and my team, but in terms of budget as well. Like I said, we moved progressively from one gold career page. And at that time, my goal and our goal was to put the company or the organization on the map. So by having a gold career page, I hope that everybody knows that, you can get 5 different audiences. So we tweak the audiences in order to have what we call a sub-career page. So we were able to promote our different business units. Fortunately, we have 4 business units. Then after 1 year rolling out this solution, it was clear for us that we need to move to the next stage. I mean that having a gold career page, tweaking the information, and we're looking for people in different areas. So we have decided to change our mind, having, let's say, a more traditional career page for the main corporation, Uni-Select. Then one of my other business units discovered that it could be very useful for them in terms of branding. So we have decided to buy another one. But at the end of the story, when I take a look on the result on the analytics, I can get the information from both. That's a beauty.
And just to provide a little bit more context, because Arnaud's company has different brands that they needed to represent, in that case, it made more sense to have 2 separate pages as opposed to one page with 5 different facets for functional areas. And so that was part of the decision, I believe,
That's a good point, because we grew up and we are still growing through acquisition. And in some cases, our acquisition still operate on their own name. Even though at the financial level, they are all under the same umbrella. I can speak about FinishMaster. FinishMaster is a division of Uni-Select, Uni-Select USA, Canada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Great.
Hi. So I have 2 questions. And this is timely because our budgeting is just going through right now. And I don't know if it's because I did such a good job, but I need some help avoiding the pitfall of selling the ROI of LinkedIn, to which the response was, fine, get rid of Monster. You can have the money then. So how do you manage, you had all talked about using more than one tool, but how do you manage ROI for those as well? And then the second piece is, from an analytics standpoint, when LinkedIn calls us to talk through analytics, they talk about, here's all the jobs that came from LinkedIn, here's all the people that came from LinkedIn. Yet when Broadbean calls me, they say, well, those all came from Indeed, they didn't come from LinkedIn. So how do I manage that to people who look at 2 different sets of data? Thanks.
Good.
I guess I can start with that. To answer your first point, if I captured your question correctly, I can't remember what the first question was.
So the first question was about having money and
Right.
having to choose. So if you want
Right.
the money, you have to take it from Monster. And I just want to, not to interrupt you, but that's exactly what happened to us. It was, you have money, you know, figure out how to spend it. And we actually did shift from taking dollars, and that was a part of that last question that I answered. It really is about what can suit your needs. And I don't mean to be repetitive, but Monster, you know, for us was creating volume. It wasn't creating quality. So yes, then I post a job today and tomorrow I'd have 50 to 100 resumes. And maybe when we went through 75 of them, 2 were okay. And I mean okay. However, with investing in a solution like LinkedIn, I was able to have a multifaceted type of approach. So yes, I can post the job, but I can also do, you know, queries and searches, and, you know, and be able to get a lot more use out of that. The problem with the ROI is it is not immediate. It is not instant gratification. So, you know, unlike with Monster where you can post a job and see 100 resumes the next day, with LinkedIn there's a lot more work that you have to do. And tracking that really is work as well, you know. So I wanted to answer that because that's exactly what we went through in our company.
And I just want to share an interesting stat when I did the actual comparison between LinkedIn and Monster. So when we went through our proof of concept, when I posted a role on LinkedIn, posted a role on Monster, well, guess what? Monster had 3 times the volume. LinkedIn, however, had much less volume. I'd probably say less than a third. However, the hit rate was much higher. And when we ran the analysis, we found that we were apt to hire people 4 times as much from LinkedIn, from the sources of LinkedIn, than we were on Monster. So we allocated our budget based on where we're getting the bang for the buck, so to speak. And that's where we went with LinkedIn.
And could you address the question of the data and the different sources of hire that are being represented by, you know, an Indeed versus a LinkedIn? So I think that's the second part.
Yeah, so if we're looking at the source of, so if I were to run our report today, this is the way it looked like. The majority of our hires come from tmx.com. The second is our employee referral program. The third is from LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is our third source of hire. The fourth one is actually Indeed. Now, the funny thing with Indeed is that we actually don't pay for Indeed. They just come and scrape our site, but they're bringing some of the volume to get volume into our applicant tracking system. However, what we find is that for every 4 or 5 applicants on Indeed, we find maybe somebody that might be a fit, whereas LinkedIn, every 1 to 2 applicants, we're looking at them as serious contenders. Now, it doesn't mean that they all go down the road of interviewing, but it's definitely more effective at targeting the right people.
And any other thoughts on the discrepancy between?
Yeah, in fact, that's a good question, because what would you like to really achieve by using LinkedIn? And I can give you a very simple situation. In our organization, we hire 80 to 85% of the new hires are for our warehouse and store. So we are looking for warehouse personnel, we are looking for store drivers. Can we fill all store driver positions through LinkedIn, especially when we are looking for someone in the middle of nowhere? Maybe yes, maybe no. But usually, we think about using LinkedIn for filling mid-level management position, executive, and all stuff like that. But guess what? It could work, because you just spoke about the referral program. If you post a job on LinkedIn, maybe you won't be able to find someone directly from LinkedIn, but this person knows someone who can maybe be the good one for your position. So you have to think differently. What would you like to achieve? Do you need to invest in Monster? Maybe yes. I can answer 2 different ways. Could work for me in a specific region, not in another region. So take, let's say, the big bucket and divide your budget based on your need.
I have 2 questions as well. First one is, are either any of you using talent communities or check-in credits? And also, what are you doing to maximize, if anything, university hires and diversity hiring with LinkedIn?
That's a really interesting question because we are launching our campus recruiting program in January. And so we're exploring the check-in option. So I'm not going to say that check-in is working for us right now. We haven't trialed it yet, but we are looking at it. From a diversity perspective, the funny thing about Canadians is we don't necessarily track that data. We certainly do in the US when we're hiring in the US, but we have EEOC compliancy and OFCCP. So yes, we have to do that, but again, it varies by various business units. So if we look at a Canadian perspective, the only thing that we actually track, and we do this from an employee survey perspective, is, maybe I'm going to get myself in trouble here, but the gender, and the age, and the tenure and the demographics. So we can slice and dice data by cities based on those components. But when we look at it from a LinkedIn perspective, if you want to talk diversity, you can look at somebody's picture and sort of figure out whether or not they're anyways, yeah. So going down the road. Like I said, I'm gonna get myself in trouble. No, but from a diversity perspective, that's something that we definitely are very keenly aware of, because if we look at our organization as a whole, 50%, and I'm going to talk generational now. So 25% of our workforce is boomers, 50% is Gen X, and 25% is Gen Y. Now, we predict over time that the diversity obviously is going to change, as well as the mix in terms of gender, but as well as a percentage of each of those particular generations. So we have to manage for that, and we have to recruit based on where these particular generations reside. Some of them are on LinkedIn, some of them are on email, some of them don't have profiles at all, so we use other methods to try and track them down. But then we have, of course, our Gen Y, which is on Facebook. Maybe not Facebook so much anymore, but we've got other venues like LinkedIn, which is, again, coming down to the college recruiting level or the university recruiting level. So,
Great.
Yeah, I can talk all day about this. All right.
Angie, anything you're doing specifically when it comes to diversity?
So we don't have a target specifically. I mean, diversity has become a very broad-based thing, not just a, ethnicity or gender. It's a lot of different things, millennials, and especially within our industry, we work a lot with trade associations. So we work with our Asian real estate professionals and our Hispanic real estate professionals, the LGBT. We partner a lot with a lot of trade associations because of the industry that we're in. But what I would say from a diversity standpoint is that we wind up getting a lot of diversity in skill set and industry. Through LinkedIn. It's not a concerted effort that we have in particular, but I would say that it does give us more a diverse slate of candidates, which is what we want our hiring managers to focus on, not just what a person looks like or where they work or how old they are. So that's what I would say.
Great.
Okay, I was actually going to ask some campus stuff, but y'all have covered that great. Jake, specific question for you. When you spoke about your executive search that you recently had, how did you talked about organizing your pipeline of candidates. Did you use, and this is kind of a tactical question, did you use the project tools to organize by city, you said you broke them into these separate groups and kind of like a funnel, right, and brought it down to these small groups. Did you utilize LinkedIn in particular, or did you do all that through your ATS and just pull all the data over?
No, in fact, I almost used LinkedIn exclusively for that because, yes, I did create a project. But once, when I created that project, I basically created one project. I threw everybody in the same bucket. And then I divided by, you can do searches, right, once you throw people in a bucket. So I divided it by city or by country, and you can use those little toggle switches on the left-hand side, right-hand side, left-hand side. Yeah, so you can use those toggle switches on the left-hand side by location. So that's how I would divide up the bucket. So once I grabbed that data, I would actually just chart it out. So I would export that data, sometimes by hand, and pop that into an Excel sheet and then create a presentation around that. So it wasn't me just showing them the whole bucket list. It was literally me just summarizing all the data by city and by tenure and by size of organization and by other comparators.
But you took the one big bucket and then separated them out into sub-projects by the different
No, so when you run a search, once you have everybody into a bucket, when you run a search, you can actually toggle the cities, you can toggle the skill set, you can toggle that. So,
and then you just pull that data ad hoc.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, I know we've talked a lot about budget regarding how we pay for LinkedIn. One of the strategies that I'm looking to do this year is to really track everything that we're doing on LinkedIn so I can go back to the business next year and say, hey, look what I delivered to your function from LinkedIn. Have any of you guys tried that strategy to get the business to pay for your contract versus coming out of your talent acquisition budget?
Yes. Not as successfully, but don't give up, right? And this really does come into play for us when a business wants to spend money on an agency or on other solutions that you feel you can accommodate through LinkedIn. And again, going back to my franchise sales, my recruiter is actually working with someone in LinkedIn. I think you really should utilize your reps here because they can really help track that for you. And so because it's going to cost an extra whatever, that's an add-on to your solution. You may not have the budget for it, but if you know that your client is willing to spend X amount of dollars on this when you can get it from LinkedIn, I think that that's how you can tie it. But first start out with what you've done and have your LinkedIn rep provide you with the analysis for it. Because I'll tell you, they're able to do that. In my applicant tracking system, it's not as robust, so I can't run reports as easily as I can. I also only have 2 recruiters. So really leverage the people who work here. They have a lot of technicians that can help you really track the activity. And if you're able to really prove that you can accomplish this, with, adding on this specific thing through LinkedIn, and they're going to pay money to either an agency or another niche site or a product or consultant, they can really give you the funds there. So I would say just, try to get some analysis and provide it to them, and that's the way you can sort of link it.
Yeah, and I certainly just want to add that from my experience, my LinkedIn representative, Adrian, has done a really phenomenal job in helping us tailor a lot of that data that's come in and pull analytics so we can compare ourselves to our competitors who's sitting in the front row, by the way. And it won't tell us who it is, but from a brand index, that's a really interesting key point because when you're actually talking to your executives, they don't get what all the stuff means, right? So when you say talent brand index, very simply, the way I sell it is our competitors here, we're here. And this list is what we need to do in order to get there. Because we're in a war for talent. We're looking for very similar people. We poach from each other all the time. It's a real pain in the butt, by the way, when you do that. Thank you. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's you have to encapsulate a whole bunch of other things other than just sort of the ROI of LinkedIn. I know you're trying to get your budget approved so that you can buy that stuff, but you have to look at sort of what's happening at the higher level as well. So, sorry.
And please leverage your relationship managers to help you look through that for your specific organization.
If I can add something, I'm sorry. I remember a talk with one of my executives when I told him 3 years ago that we are going to increase our visibility on the market. Increase how you can measure the, let's say, your visibility. But I was able with Eric, if you remember. I got some information in terms of talent brand index where we did demonstrate that we have the highest talent brand index compared to our peers. We increased the volume of applicants months over months by more than 15%. So it will result in hiring more easily our people, basically. So that's the information you can put on the table in front of your, let's say, the decision maker.
Hi, I'm wondering if any of you have incented your recruiters. So you're finding these hard-to-fill positions or these executive positions where you'll be spending $100,000 on a search. Are you saying to your recruiter, if you find that job, I'm going to pay you $5,000? Is anyone doing that?
No.
I get that question all the time.
No, and she's sitting right there. No, it's not going to happen. Sorry. It's a great, great, great approach, but not at the company that I work in. However, I think that, it depends on your model. I think that, it's not cookie cutter. So it depends on the model and the structure of your organization. If you have the appetite and the budget dollars to do that, I think you do want to incent that. And sometimes in corporations like ours, it's just not feasible. However, there's other ways to incent. So I would say that, you want to look to do that.
Hi, Arnaud, question pour vous. You mentioned the differing business units that you had. And when we talk about ROI, we initially talk about that investment. So how did you kind of split that investment amongst those business units? Did they all split that cost equally? And did you measure that versus activity? How did you get them to
Good
buy in?
question. And unfortunately, I can't do that. Because depending, just to give you a quick overview, we do have 6,000 employees. 85% of them are located in the US, split across 3 different organizations. Okay. One is a very small organization with less than 200 people. The other one is a bigger one with close to 1,500 people. So long story short, we do have a chargeback model. Mm-hmm. So depending on the initiative and depending on the business, I'm able to charge back 20%, 100%. And if we speak about the silver carrier page, this specific business unit told me that we want to have our own our own carrier page. I said, fine, but we won't split the bill across the organization. We're going to maintain your carrier page, so it will be 100% fee for you. So it depends on the financial model, basically.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Great. If there are no other questions, round of applause for our great panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.